Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Politics. I'm here with Sam Oser Gomez, and you are a Houston resident, a friend of mine. We've been talking while you can talk during all this, and there's a lot going on down there that I think the corporate media doesn't report. You, for the most part, have been okay, but first and foremost, just tell me where you live in Houston and what you've been experiencing over the last few days.
I live southeast Houston by Hobby Airport, so I'm about 20 minutes from downtown and about an hour from Galveston. The last couple of days, well, it started Friday. We went to my in-laws and we were like, okay, this is fine, whatever. And then Saturday we came home because there wasn't any rain. And it wasn't expected to come back around until about Wednesday. So Saturday we went home, no problem. But then Saturday night, it came down with like fury. It was insane. We woke up to both of our cars completely flooded. Our apartment complex turned into this giant pool. Luckily, we still had electricity, but we were trapped.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trapped in the apartment Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then yesterday we walked for an hour to our local grocery store, and then had to wait. And then we didn't know that we only had 10 minutes to shop while we were in the grocery store. And then found ourselves on a little bit of a rescue mission, which we couldn't do because the neighborhood was too flooded. So we just dropped off the boat and then had to head home.
Why did you only have 10 minutes in the grocery store?
I'm not sure. What I'm thinking, when we were in line for the grocery store was HEB. When we were in line waiting, they told us, like, look, you can only get one carton of eggs, you can only get one milk and 2 cases of water. Everything else is up for grabs, you can get whatever. But they didn't tell us that we only had 10 minutes. When we walked into the grocery store, and I think they were only letting in maybe like 20 families at a time, because when we got up there, they had given us a number. We were number 3, and they were counting backwards. And there were a lot of people in front of us. But as soon as we got into the grocery store, I was picking out some fresh veggies, just sort of, taking my time, whatever. And all of a sudden on the PA system, we hear, 10 minutes, shoppers, you have 10 minutes. We're like, what in the world? But then the next thing you knew it, we had like 2 minutes left, and we had to go to the cashier as soon as possible.
Wow. And were the prices generally the same, or this grocery store was gouging as well?
The prices were generally the same. HEB is a really good grocery store in Texas. Heck, I almost bought a rack of ribs because they were $8. And that's normal pricing for HEB meats. Like, they have good prices. The only reason why it got expensive towards the end is because people were buying the cheap milk, the cheap eggs, and then as it became fewer and fewer, only the organic stuff was left. So I paid about, $5 for an organic carton of 12 dozen, eggs. But that was the only reason why the prices went up.
Yeah. And so yesterday was basically the first time you've gotten out in a few days. So what was your reaction? Because from some of the images you sent me, you were kind of, in some places it was a little less flooding, and other places, it looked like whitewater rafting.
Yeah, it pretty much was. I'm not even in downtown Houston where the freeways are completely submerged, but we walked to the nearest Walmart, which was empty. The parking lot was clear, except for some places where cars were flooded, and then we walked to another grocery store that was empty, but the roads were completely deserted with a couple of cars just floating, some of them even completely flooded underwater. All you could see was the hood of their cars. There were some cases where the water came up like up to my chest area. And then when we were walking towards HEB, there was this one section of neighborhood that was legitimately a current. We had to do like um, one of those human chains, more or less, because everyone had to get to the grocery store. So the people that were walking, we had to form a human chain between this intersection and the neighborhood so we could get across the street. There were some people in pickup trucks giving rides to people, like to the grocery store and back to their homes and whatnot. On our way there, we weren't lucky enough to get on a pickup truck. We were just walking, but on our way back, we found someone with the truck to help us out.
Hmm. And you're pretty wired into the activist community down there. You've done a lot in terms of progressive activism. You're also independent journalism. So in cases like this, like I'm not even there, and I'm in like two or three group chats. So I'm sure you're hearing a lot of stuff from activists about different things that you're not really seeing reported anywhere. Can you kind of talk about like what you've sorted through in terms of what's fact, what's fiction, what you're not sure about?
Um, right now, it seems like there's a lot of rescues not actually happening. There was a CNN interviewed a woman about she was trapped in her house for 5 days, even after calling the cops, even after calling the policemen. And we're definitely seeing a lot of this on the ground. Um, and of course, CNN didn't air that. I found it through one of the activist channels. CNN didn't air that because the person being interviewed, the victim of the flooding, she went off on the reporter. She told the reporter completely off.
Hmm.
Like, how dare you? Why are you here with your microphone all up in my face? Don't you see I don't have anything? Um, and we're seeing a lot of cases where people just aren't getting rescued. And there's, whenever the storm first started and electricity was going out, we saw more of the white populated neighborhoods getting immediate attention when it comes to electricity or any sort of flood help, whereas the people of color, the hood, as people unfortunately say, were getting left behind. Um, and these are the people that have been trying to rely on Facebook for sharing rescues. So all the activists that I've been seeing, they've been sharing like, hey, this address, they need help now. And then we just share it, circulate it through social media until they get help.
Hmm.
And then there's this app called Zello where you can like listen in on different channels, and even listening to these different channels, there was one I was listening to yesterday that there was about 20 people trapped in a neighborhood, and the boats and all the rescue team couldn't get through because there was so much debris in the water.
Hmm.
And that's right now the media is where the people who are already rescued are. And in a way, that's kind of good because not yesterday, Monday, there was an influx of people calling our local stations because news reporters were on rescue boats taking up space, and families were getting separated because there wasn't any space on the rescue boats. Or some families were like, I'll just wait for the next rescue boat. I don't want to get separated. So in some parts, it's kind of a catch-22. But at the same time, these reporters could be listening on, the Zello app, reporting what's happening through the app. They could be a little more tapped into the activist communities to see what they're saying. But, they're not.
Well, that's a whole different discussion. We know that corporate reporters like to get their news from politicians and just regurgitate talking points rather than talk to people. But I digress.
Yeah.
So obviously, Texas is like the oil capital of the country, maybe even the world, if you want to, separate Saudi Arabia. So there has been a lot of damage to refineries. There's been chemical leaks. I have not seen much of that anywhere on CNN or the Times or anywhere like that. There was a really toxic smell hanging over parts of Houston. Is there more of that we don't know of? What do you know about that?
Well, so far the only gas leak that I've seen has been in one of our suburbs, LaPorte. LaPorte, Shore Acres, and Baytown. And that place, like, those suburbs are refinery city. They are everywhere. You go into Baytown and you smell it immediately. You smell it immediately. Um, so what had happened there was the chemical hydrogen chloride, which causes eye, throat, and nasal irritation, had occurred, and that leak was there for about 2 days. And hold on, let me double check. I had to put my dog away because he's not being very cooperative at the moment. He's been pent up, so
Yeah.
he just,
Yeah, no problem.
poor thing. Yeah. So it seems like it was the Valero. And again, so a lot of people aren't reporting on this. It's through the activist pipeline, and then I haven't been able to get out because I've been trapped to confirm a lot of this. But the chemical spill, according to Reuters, happened at the Valero plant, according to an emergency source. So that was happening, and people in LaPorte, Shore Acres, and Baytown were under chemical lockdown. They had to turn off their AC, turn off everything, and they weren't allowed to go outside because that chemical spill had happened. And even though it was only reported in LaPorte, Shore Acres, and Baytown, that chemical spill, I saw reports in downtown Houston, the East End, of the same smell and the same symptoms. The throat and nasal irritation, eye irritation. So the chemical spill traveled up into downtown Houston, but downtown Houston was so chaotic that they didn't do anything or try to do anything about the smell there. It was finally contained yesterday. So it lasted from the 28th for at least a day and a half. But still, they should have shut down the refineries. Like, clearly there is this massive, insane hurricane. Why not shut down the refineries?
Well, we don't want big oil to lose, 10 seconds of their profits. So, yeah, of course. And, obviously right now it's just kind of getting through the worst of it, but you're in Texas and Houston is very lush in oil. Have you heard any talk from residents or anybody about, why is this flooding unprecedented? Any talk on climate change, or like you haven't been out enough to even hear that?
I haven't been out enough to even hear that. But I've been watching local news stations, ABC 13, KPRC, and none of them seem to click that this is clearly a thing because of climate change. I did see on Facebook one of the former mayors of Port Arthur. Port Arthur got hit tremendously hard. It's the most devastated community, aside from maybe Corpus Christi. Houston's getting a lot of attention, but we were not the ones hit first. But the ex-mayor of Port Arthur, he did a little Facebook Live thing, and I forget his name at the moment. But he was saying that he's been a resident of Port Arthur for 30, 40 years, and he's had to deal with several hurricanes, and he has not seen anything like this one. He said that the hurricanes are getting worse. Did he say climate change? No. But he did acknowledge that the hurricanes were getting worse every season.
Mm-hmm. And has there been any talk about the drought or droughts in Texas and that contribution?
No, there hasn't.
Now, they always say like now's not the time to talk about it, but like since you're fairly stable at the moment, what are your thoughts? Because it seems crazy to me. Like I'm already reading articles about how lawmakers are going to be, pretty much begging for subsidies for the oil companies to help them with the profits they've lost. Kind of talks about helping business and small businesses that have been hurt, which I don't entirely disagree with that end. But it seems to me just a continuation of corporate welfare. I'm not hearing a lot of talk about helping people who have been displaced or helping people whose homes have been devastated. It seems to me that like in Katrina and even Sandy, the wrong priorities up front.
Yeah, definitely. And we're still seeing people push to donate to Red Cross, which is the worst place to donate to because they just line their pockets. Very few of the money actually goes to the help. And we've been seeing that with some of Joel Osteen's church stuff too. Now a lot of the activist groups that I'm seeing, they're doing a fantastic job of pushing to people who are wanting to pay attention. That these are the groups that you need to be donating to. Houston Food Bank and other nonprofits. But aside from, mainstream media or just anything mainstream, there isn't anything pushing local nonprofits. It's just pushing the Red Cross and how are businesses going to get built back up, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And, I think one thing I did a video on the other day was all these words like unprecedented, stunning, never before seen. And maybe in some ways in that area it is, but it seems that all these journalists kind of act like this is something we could have never expected and who would have thunk it. And I think that kind of creeps into the viewers and citizens. Like this is just, some anomaly. This is, hopefully it doesn't happen again, but these are happening, First it's like a 1 in 100 year type of storm, then it moves to 1 in 50 years, and I just spoke with a scientist who says it could be every other year, So once the worst is over, what do you think needs to be done to educate people? Because straight up, I mean, Texas, nothing against the people, but they like their guns, they like their oil, and they're not exactly big on listening to all things science.
Right. Well, what a lot of people don't know about Texas is that Texas is actually more of a purple state than it is a red state. I know that sounds ridiculous, but we've seen an influx of people from liberal states move here, particularly to Houston. Harris County is the largest county in Texas, and it is the bluest county. The problem is, getting people to vote, which is always the more difficult thing. But Texas is a lot more purple than people realize. And I was like, nah, you're full of crap. This isn't real, like talking to some of my activist friends. But then I have some activist friends who are really, really plugged in to like van access, voter databases and whatnot. And right now, people are so, I guess they conform to believe that Texas, is red. Texas, gun-toting, oil-loving rednecks. And that's true to a certain extent, but that's a very, very quickly changing demographic. But because we've been so brainwashed to believe this narrative, we're having a hard time accepting what's true now. Mm-hmm. So it's really just a matter of time before people realize their power in all of this. And it boils down that people just need to come out to vote and be a little more politically active.
Right. Well, I appreciate you talking. Just mention one more time, you said the Houston Food Bank. Anything else people could do to help?
Houston Food Bank. I had a list. You can donate to our local Black Lives Matter group, Black Lives Matter Houston. Look them up on Facebook. They are full of information, where to go, what to do. Also to our homeless community, Share Door is spearheading that.